I never paid much attention to Liam. He was that quiet kid in my AP chemistry class who always sat at the back with his hood up, headphones in, scribbling in a notebook I never bothered to look at. Honestly, I didn't even know what he looked like under that messy hair and hood because I was too busy with my friends and my social life to care about some invisible boy. I was popular, confident, and had my schedule packed with parties, cheer practice, and weekend hangouts. Liam? He existed somewhere on the periphery, a background extra in the movie of my high school life. I didn't even notice him on the first day of school when everyone was introducing themselves because I was too busy waving at Jenna and Max across the room. He just muttered a quiet hello, barely audible, and I thought, who even cares? Then one Tuesday, our teacher, Mr. Andrews, announced a new group project for the class. Pairs, he said. You will be working with someone you haven't collaborated with before. I felt my stomach drop because I had been secretly hoping to be paired with Jenna or someone from our circle. But the fates had other plans. My name was called first, and Mr. Andrews looked down at his list, then up at me and said, "You'll be working with Liam." The class snickered, and I forced a polite smile, feeling a mix of annoyance and embarrassment. I whispered, "Ugh, seriously?" And he shrugged, barely lifting his eyes. The bell rang, and I gathered my things, already planning to get him to do all the work. Walking out of the classroom, I heard a soft voice behind me. "Do you want to meet at the library after school?" I turned, expecting him to stutter or mumble something awkward, but instead, he sounded almost confident. "Fine," I said reluctantly, already rolling my eyes. At the library, I arrived 10 minutes early, scrolling through my phone, checking notifications, trying to ignore the quiet kid who eventually arrived, hood up, eyes fixed on the table. "Hey," he said, setting down a stack of textbooks. "I figured we could split the work. I did the math problems last night and took notes on the first chapter." I blinked, surprised. This was organized, meticulous, not at all what I expected. I nodded, trying to hide my surprise, and muttered, "Cool, cool." As we started working, I realized that Liam wasn't just smart. He was brilliant. He explained complex concepts in a way that made sense, even to someone like me who usually skimmed the textbook. He wasn't showy about it. He just quietly made everything click. By the end of the library session, I had to admit, in my head, that maybe I'd misjudged him. And then came the small, unexpected thing. He laughed at one of my dumb jokes. Not a polite, forced laugh, but an actual laugh that made my chest feel weird. I felt a twinge of something I didn't recognize, something new. Over the next week, we met after school to work on the project, and every session was like this strange little bubble where I could forget everyone else, even for a little while. I started noticing things. The way he tucks his hair behind his ear when he's concentrating, the faint freckle on his cheek, the way his eyes light up when he's excited about a problem he solved. I caught myself glancing at him more than I should, feeling an annoying heat in my cheeks whenever he smiled. And then, one Thursday, something happened that made my heart almost stop. We were at the library, working on the last part of the project, and he asked me quietly, "Do you want to see something?" I nodded, curious. He pulled out a small, folded piece of paper and handed it to me. I opened it and froze. It was a drawing of the classroom from memory, every detail perfectly captured, and in the corner, a little doodle of me sitting at my usual spot, laughing. I looked up at him, and he was grinning, his hood pushed back slightly, revealing messy brown hair and intense green eyes. I drew it last week," he said, scratching the back of his neck nervously. "I didn't know if you'd like it, so I just kept it." I felt heat rush to my face. I wanted to say something clever, something cool, but all that came out was a quiet, "Wow." His grin widened, and I realized something that terrified and thrilled me at the same time. I was genuinely interested in him. Not just curious, not just noticing him. Interested in Liam, the quiet, nerdy kid I had ignored in class. And that realization hit me harder than I expected because it meant I had been wrong all along. I had judged him without knowing him. And now, I didn't want to look away. After that day at the library, everything between Liam and me started shifting in ways I didn't expect. And I couldn't tell if it was the project, the quiet afternoons together, or something in the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't noticing. I kept telling myself it was just a school project, just helping him with the chemistry equations and organizing the data. But the way my stomach twisted when he leaned over my shoulder to explain a formula, the way his hand brushed mine as we passed papers back and forth, told a different story. One Friday afternoon, we were staying late to finish our presentation, and the library was practically empty. I was half asleep, doodling in my notebook, when he suddenly asked, "Do you want to grab a coffee?" I froze because he never suggested anything outside of school. My first instinct was to say no, but my lips moved before my brain could stop them. Sure. We walked to the little cafe across the street, quiet except for the sound of the espresso machine and the occasional bell over the door. I watched him carefully, noticing the small details I'd missed before, the crease of concentration between his brows, the way he tucked his hoodie strings into his pocket, how his voice softened when he ordered for both of us. We sat across from each other, sipping our drinks, and for a few minutes, nothing was said, just the comfortable sound of quiet, the warmth of the cafe wrapping around us. Then he smiled, that shy, slightly awkward smile, and said, "I never thought someone like you would actually hang out with me." I laughed, surprised, and said, "And what kind of person am I supposed to be?" He tilted his head, eyes scanning my face as if trying to memorize it. "I don't know. Someone who notices me." The words hit me like a punch, and I realized I'd been doing exactly that, noticing him too much maybe, and I felt my face heat up. I tried to play it cool, sipping my drink, pretending I hadn't just realized my own feelings. Over the next few weeks, we started seeing each other more outside of school. Study sessions turned into walks in the park turned into grabbing dinner, and every time, I felt that strange, thrilling flutter that I'd only read about in books. But just when I was starting to let myself feel something real, something unexpected happened that threw me off completely. One Tuesday, I saw him talking to another girl in the hallway, someone from the debate team, laughing and leaning close, and my stomach dropped. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I had no claim on him, but the jealousy was sharp, stabbing. Later that day, I tried to bring it up, casually, but he just shrugged. "She's just a friend." I wanted to believe him, I really did, but the doubt lingered, a dark shadow creeping over the happiness I had been feeling. Then came the science fair, the big event where our project would be judged, and Liam and I spent hours preparing our presentation. I noticed he was quieter than usual, distracted, and every time I tried to catch his eye, he avoided mine. After we finished our setup, he finally turned to me, eyes serious, and said, "I need to tell you something, but I don't know how you'll react." My heart thumped in my chest. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He took a deep breath, then blurted, "I've been accepted into that summer program in New York, and it starts next week." I felt like the floor had been pulled from under me. "Next week? That's impossible. We barely have time." He shook his head, frustration and excitement mixed on his face. I know. I didn't expect it either. But it's a huge opportunity. And I can't say no." My chest felt tight, and suddenly, everything we had been building, the subtle glances, the late-night study sessions, the coffee, the walks, it felt fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to complain, but I also knew he couldn't give this up. I wanted to support him, I really did, but a part of me wanted him to stay, just a little longer, so I could figure out what I was feeling. So I could finally admit that I liked him, really liked him. The week passed in a blur of preparation, stolen moments, and whispered confessions, and then came the day he was leaving. I stood at the train station, heart pounding, watching him with his backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie up, looking every bit the same, quiet, nerdy kid I had ignored at first, yet somehow completely different to me now. "Promise me you'll text?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He smiled softly, that same awkward, endearing smile that made me feel like I was melting from the inside. "I promise." And as the train pulled away, I realized that my feelings for him had grown faster than I could process, stronger than I expected, and that everything I thought I knew about who I liked, who I noticed, and who mattered in my life, had been completely turned upside down by the quiet boy I had once ignored in class. The days after Liam left were unbearable. The apartment of my mind suddenly echoing with his absence, every text I sent feeling too long, too short, too silly, too serious, and every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped with hope that it was him, that it was a message that would make everything okay. But the messages were never quite enough. He sent me pictures of New York, the skyline at sunset, a cup of coffee at some hip cafe, his notebook filled with scrawled formulas and doodles. But each picture made me ache more. Each word on the screen made the distance feel impossible. I started noticing myself changing in ways I didn't expect. I was quieter in the hallways, less eager to join Jenna and Max at lunch, more distracted in class, my thoughts constantly drifting to him. And then came the late night call that would change everything. It was almost midnight when my phone rang, and his face appeared on the screen, eyes bright, but something behind them that I didn't understand. "Hey," he said softly, "are you awake?" I swallowed hard, heart racing. "Yeah, of course. Everything okay?" He hesitated, and then, "Not exactly. Something happened here. At the program." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He ran a hand through his hair, something frantic in his movements. I can't explain it all over text. I don't want to worry you too much, but it's complicated. I need you to trust me, okay?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Okay, I trust you." That night, we talked for hours, and I learned that life in New York was more intense than I imagined. Professors pushing him to his limits, projects piling up, a pressure he hadn't expected, and an undercurrent of something he didn't want to admit. A mistake, a misunderstanding, someone he didn't know how to handle. By the time we hung up, I was exhausted, mentally drained, and more obsessed than ever with him. I couldn't stop thinking about what he had hinted at, the way his eyes had darted away, the tension in his voice, the shadow behind his smile. Over the next week, our calls became more frequent, more urgent, and I started noticing patterns. He would disappear for hours, answer slowly, sometimes not at all, and every time he returned, he seemed almost different, almost hiding something. I tried to push my suspicions aside, to trust him, to believe that this was just the stress of the program, that he was still Liam, the quiet, brilliant boy I had fallen for. But then came the message that broke me, a photo, sent late at night, of him laughing, arm around another girl. The caption innocuous, but my stomach sank, every nerve ending screaming that something was wrong. I called immediately, frantic, my hands shaking as I demanded explanations. Liam's voice was calm, almost too calm, and he said, "She's just a friend. Please, you have to trust me." I wanted to, I really did, but doubt gnawed at me, sharper than anything I had felt before. The next few days were hell, a roller coaster of emotions, texts read and reread, imagined scenarios spinning in my head, a war between trust and jealousy I didn't think I could survive. And then, in the middle of this chaos, a surprise, he returned home for the weekend. I ran to see him the second he texted that he had landed. The train station, a blur of people, and when I finally saw him, my heart did that ridiculous flip again, that irrational, uncontrollable flip that told me I was still hopelessly, undeniably drawn to him. But the moment was ruined by the tension in his eyes, the way he avoided my gaze, the way he fidgeted like he was carrying a secret too heavy to tell. "Hey," I said, my voice shaky, and he managed a small smile. "Hey," he replied. For the first hour, we talked about everything and nothing, reliving small moments, laughing at silly jokes, and I almost believed everything was fine, that the long-distance nightmare had ended. But then, in the quiet of his room, the real confession came unprompted. "I need to tell you something," he said, voice low, serious. "About the other night, the picture, the girl." I felt my chest tighten, every muscle tense. "What?" He took a deep breath, eyes locked on mine, and whispered, "It wasn't what it looked like. But I can't tell you yet. Not until I figure it out. I didn't want to hurt you." I stared at him, the mix of relief and fear swirling inside me like a storm, realizing that I didn't just like him anymore. I was in deep, tangled up in him, and that the next revelation could either bring us closer or shatter everything. And I knew, as I watched him pace the room, hoodie pulled tight, messy hair falling into his eyes, that nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. The next morning, I woke with a restless knot in my stomach, replaying Liam's words over and over. The hesitation in his voice, the secret he was keeping, and I knew that I couldn't ignore it any longer. I spent the day trying to distract myself, classes, homework, even scrolling mindlessly through my phone, but every notification made me jump. Every laugh in the hallway reminded me of the tension, and every time I imagined him with someone else, My chest ached with a sharp, undeniable jealousy. When he texted that evening, asking if I wanted to meet at the park, I didn't hesitate. I needed answers, whether I liked them or not. He was already there when I arrived, leaning against the railing near the fountain, hood down, eyes scanning the empty benches like he was waiting for something, or someone. As soon as I approached, he straightened, face unreadable, and I felt that mix of relief and anxiety all at once. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, though my voice probably betrayed me. "Hey," he replied, and for a moment, neither of us spoke, just the wind in the trees and the faint hum of traffic in the distance. Finally, I blurted, "I need you to be honest with me, Liam. No secrets, no hiding. I can handle it, whatever it is, but I need to know the truth." His jaw tightened, and I saw the conflict flicker across his face, a storm I couldn't control. "It's complicated," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want to tell you over text, because it wouldn't make sense. And I didn't want to scare you off, but you deserve to know everything." My stomach twisted, my heart hammering, and I nodded, gripping the strap of my bag like an anchor. "Tell me." He took a deep breath, then began. "The girl in the picture, she's my cousin. She runs a lot of my social media for the program. She's protective, and she doesn't like anyone getting too close to me, especially someone she doesn't know. She posted that picture to make it look like I was hanging out with someone else, just to test how I handle distractions, how I balance my focus, but I never expected you to see it." I froze, a mixture of shock, relief, and disbelief washing over me. "Your cousin tested you?" I whispered. He nodded, frustration and guilt mixing in his expression. "She's controlling, but I couldn't just tell her to stop. It would have caused drama I wasn't ready for. I tried to handle it quietly, and I never meant to hurt you." My mind reeled, spinning between anger at her, confusion about him, and the relief that he hadn't actually betrayed me. But before I could respond, he added something that made my heart stop. "There's more. She's been manipulating a few things behind the scenes, emails, messages." I didn't know how deep it went until yesterday. "I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you from all the chaos." My head was spinning. The jealousy, the fear, the anger, it all collided in a whirlwind. And yet beneath it, there was an undeniable pull toward him, toward the truth finally being laid bare. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to hug him until everything made sense. And somehow, I did all of that at once. I threw my arms around him, and he stiffened, then relaxed, wrapping me in a hug that felt like home and danger all at the same time. "I hate that she did this to us," I muttered into his hoodie. "I know," he whispered back, "and I hate that I didn't tell you sooner. But we can fix this, together." And for the first time in weeks, I believed him. We spent hours untangling the web she had created, emails, messages, rumors, everything. And the more we unraveled, the closer we grew. Each revelation a thread binding us tighter. Each secret laid bare a reason to trust him more. By the end of the night, exhausted and emotionally raw, we sat on the park bench, hands intertwined, and I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. I was falling for him. Completely, without restraint, and even the chaos his cousin had caused couldn't stop it. As we walked home, side by side, I knew that the real challenge wasn't just the distance, the program, or the meddling cousin. It was us, our feelings, and whether we could survive the obstacles ahead without letting fear or doubt tear us apart. And I couldn't wait to find out. The next few weeks were a whirlwind, balancing school, the program, and the remnants of his cousin's interference. But for the first time, Liam and I felt like we were truly on the same team, facing everything together instead of apart. And it was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. We spent late nights talking on video calls, planning weekends, sending voice notes. And even though the distance was still there, every message, every laugh, every shared secret made the gap feel smaller, almost irrelevant. And then came the homecoming weekend, the one event I had been secretly dreading and looking forward to at the same time. Because everyone expected me to show up with someone, and I had no one except Liam had promised he would make it. I paced in my room before the dance, heart racing, trying to decide what to wear, obsessing over how my hair looked, how my smile appeared in the mirror, and suddenly my phone buzzed. It was a text from Liam. "I'm here. I found a way. Wait for me outside." My chest jumped. I grabbed my jacket, slipped on my shoes, and practically ran out of the house, heart thumping like a drum. And there he was, standing under the old oak tree by the school entrance, hoodie swapped for a jacket, hair messy in that way I loved, eyes bright and nervous. I froze, and he grinned, holding out his hand. "Dance with me?" he asked, voice low, almost shy. I laughed, a little breathless, and took his hand, letting him guide me into the crowd of students, and for the first time, I didn't feel self-conscious, didn't worry about what anyone thought. It was just us. The music played, lights flashing, people moving around, but in that moment, everything else melted away. Liam leaned closer, whispering in my ear, "I didn't think we'd make it this far without drama." I laughed, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "I know, but we did." And just like that, the months of stress, distance, jealousy, and secrets faded into the background, replaced by something thrilling and real. We danced until the last song, holding on to each other like we were the only two people in the world. And when the lights came up, he pulled me outside, under the stars, and said, "I've been wanting to do this for months." My heart skipped. "Do what?" He took a deep breath, eyes searching mine, and whispered, "Tell you that I like you. Really like you. And I don't want to hide it anymore." I felt heat rush to my cheeks, my chest swelling with a happiness I hadn't expected. And I whispered back, "I like you too, Liam. I've liked you for weeks, probably longer." He smiled, that shy, awkward, endearing smile that made me melt every time, and then kissed me softly, carefully, as if the world could crumble around us and it wouldn't matter. And in that moment, the nerd I had ignored in class, the quiet boy I had never noticed, became my crush, my everything. The person who had turned my world upside down and made me realize that love often comes from the places you least expect. We walked home hand in hand that night, talking about everything and nothing, future plans and silly dreams. And I knew that no matter what challenges came next, the program, distance, meddling relatives, we had each other. And that was enough. Liam had taught me that first impressions aren't everything, that brilliance often hides in quiet corners, and that the person you overlook could be the one who changes your life in ways you never imagined. And as we looked up at the stars, hearts beating in sync, I realized that ignoring him had been the best mistake I had ever made, because it led me straight to him, to us, and to a story I would never forget.